user virtual group meeting. We're going to wait for 1 more minute before we start. Happy Friday again. This is Mark Wu. I'm your host for today's Tableau Server Admin User Virtual Group meeting. For better recording quality, everyone is muted. During the presentation, you can use Q&A button to submit your questions. We will have multiple pauses during the presentation. Try to catch up some of those questions. And at the end, we will have some dedicated time to clear, hopefully, all of your questions. Today, our focus is Tableau extension. My name is Mark Wu. I'm a server admin, and I'm very excited about Tableau extension. Let me give you some context before our guest speaker, Michael Carviner, start his presentation. Tableau extension is a great new innovation from Tableau. It allows us to integrate third-party applications into Tableau dashboard. You may wonder, we have been able to embed a web page into a dashboard for a long time, but what is new? What is the difference between extension versus web page? Well, a huge difference is that when you embed with web page into your dashboard, it's more like static. But extension allows you to pass the workbook filters, parameters, summary, and even detailed data into your embedded third-party applications, which creates a world of new possibilities. Now, if you wonder how that happens, actually there is API. It's called extension API behind the scene. When you embed the extensions, basically on a high level, you allow that extension access your workbook data through the API. Now you may wonder, what happens if the API is outside your company, somewhere outside the firewall? Is that safe enough? Well, that is exactly why we want to have this meeting today. On one side, extension creates a lot of new possibilities, but on the other side, it does have some vulnerabilities. The community leaders like Mark Jackson, Paul, Bonov, Thomas Foldy, and others all voiced very strong concerns for the potential vulnerabilities that extension brings up. The reason why we want to talk about this today is not we try to beat up Tableau, but we wanted to put our heads together, try to help Tableau to figure out the best way that on the one side we enable extensions, other side try to reduce whatever potential data vulnerabilities. At the TC18, we had server admin meetups. The main topic for that hour and a half, almost 2 hours meetup was mainly around extensions. One action came out of the meetup was to have Tableau dev team talk about the next steps for extensions with this community. Before I gave the slide to Michael, I wanted to answer one of your questions, which is how bad the security concerns for extension. Well, let's talk about both desktop side and the server side. For desktop today, as you can see the screenshot on top, I have a very latest desktop, 18.3.1, which was released yesterday. I'm able to turn the extension off by using either if you're Windows or Mac, you can turn off and on if you want. So that's one way today is doable. Let's talk about server side. How bad the security concern is really depends on the configurations you have on your server. If you take the default configuration out of the box, which has the flag checked to enable unknown extensions to run on your server. For me, that is very risky. That is a big no-no for my environment. Well, some people may go all the way around. The good news is Tableau does give us option as server admins to turn off the extensions on the server completely. If you want to go that far, there is option, but I don't feel that is the right option for a lot of us as well, because I feel that is too conservative. What I do today with the current version of Tableau server is I use this configuration, enable the extension on my server by site, but also I uncheck the unknown extensions. Means I only enable specific extensions on my server for the specific site. With that, I feel it is good enough configurations on server. That's how I'm doing that today. Although the desktop side a little bit more tricky, especially if you do not have control on how the desktop is installed in your company. It's very tricky and very challenging. With that, I'll invite Michael Kruvener, who introduced himself, to talk about what Tableau is doing. And also today's Michael's presentation will also, with a good intent, it try to get some feedback from this community. So during his presentation, feel free to use Q&A button to submit your questions. We'll try to pause multiple times to get some of your questions answered. Michael?
Great, thanks, Mark. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here. And Mark, can you confirm that you can see my deck?
Yep.
Great. Okay, thanks again, Mark. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me today. My name is Michael Kruvener. I'm a product manager on Tableau's developer platform. Tableau's developer platform is basically a team responsible for all of the APIs, public-facing APIs. I specifically focus most of my days on extensions. So I'm really happy to be here and talk to you all about your concerns around extension security, as Mark just alluded to, and to explain what our plans are moving forward. And most importantly, the main reason why I'm here is to solicit feedback related to our plans moving forward. So instead of saying this is our roadmap, our intention is to say this is our proposed roadmap for enhancing extension security. And we really want to hear from you all and see to what degree it matches your needs. Before I do that, a little bit about the history of extensions development and release. Then I'll talk a little bit about how extensions work today, which will help highlight where the specific points where the security concerns come into play, and that'll help inform the discussion around the proposal for enhancing extension security. So back at TC17 in Vegas, we released the extensions API in a developer preview mode. So you think of this as like an alpha version for developers to start playing with the extensions API. And there was thousands of developers who signed up and started building extensions. We did something unique and on our team for this developer preview. Every 2 weeks, we had a new developer preview build, a new alpha build out to the developer preview program with everything we had built in the past 2 weeks so that people could work with us and iterate from the developer preview all the way to release. This conversation we're having right now is kind of in that spirit of open development. We've already released, but we're moving towards the next step. And as we start building stuff, we want to solicit feedback during the development as opposed to afterwards. Okay, so moving on from October 2017 all the way to June 2018, the release of Tableau server and desktop 2018.2 was when Dashboard Extensions was released to the general public. A few months after that, we have TC18, just a couple, are we up to a couple months ago in October of 2018. There was a lot of discussion around extensions, and being the product manager for extensions, it was really exciting. There was tons of companies saying that they are going to do this and this and this with extensions to take their dashboards to the next level. And we also were able to continue building that community around extensions development. But there were also a lot of extension security discussions. Mark already talked about the server admin group. That was where extension security was discussed. And a lot of people came up to me in the hallways after my presentations, et cetera, and had similar messages. For those that weren't there, if you want a good summary of what was discussed around this, Paul Banoob has a good blog post about this. So search for Paul Banoob on Tableau extensions. Really good blog post that summarizes his concerns and what happened at TC around Tableau extensions. Okay, so what are we doing now? Based on the discussions we had at TC18, we have made it our team's #1 priority to enhance extension security. I'm getting a little button chat. Okay, so there's a couple. Okay, Mark's sending some stuff to chat. Okay, great. All right, so it is our team's #1 priorities to enhance security, and that means a couple things: make extensions more secure inherently, and give admins more control. So what does that development work look like? What are we doing right now? Well, the first step was to have a survey, a Qualtrics survey that we sent out to everyone who attended the most recent virtual user group and the user group at TC. If you didn't get that, then you might not have been on that participation list, but we sent that out to gather people's concerns and understanding of their environment. That was a couple weeks ago. Concurrently, we had our software engineers explore technical solutions, do research, and start building out some prototypes. Those 2 steps are done, and also done just recently is for us to, based on the findings of those 2 first bullet points, to establish a proposal for enhancing extension security. Now we are soliciting feedback on this proposal. That's everything that I've been talking about. To explain what that proposal is the rest of the presentation, and then to solicit feedback and see if we're on the right track is the critical piece of this. After we get confident that we're on the right track, then we'll build it. And as I said, we are super motivated to build these features as soon as possible. Now, before I talk about what we will be building, it helps to really understand extensions underneath the hood, so you can understand the technical details of the security concerns. So I'm going to be talking for a few slides about the status quo, about what extensions look like today. So what is an extension? The easiest way to put it is that it's in a web application, and that's what it is. You build you build an HTML, JavaScript, and CSS application for Tableau to use as the extension. The developer will also create what we call a manifest file. It's the T-Rex file. And this is basically a metadata about the web application. It contains the author's name, the company's email address, and then most importantly, the URL for Tableau to use to load the web application. Now, in this slide, I use a cloud to show the web application. It can be a cloud hosted. It can be internally hosted, wherever you would host a web application, and it continues to live there. Now, finally, the dashboard author, as Mark showed, drags an extension object out to the dashboard and chooses the manifest file, and that now the web application that acts as the extension is loaded inside the dashboard. That's the workflow to go from development to living inside of a user's dashboard. But what the critical piece here to understanding extension security is what actually happens when an extension is running inside of a dashboard. So on the right hand of the dotted line, we have the client. By that we mean the dashboard interactor's computer. Right, and so that's their browser if they are looking at Tableau Server Viz, or Tableau Desktop if they have that open. They have a Tableau dashboard which has an extension in it. That extension is just a reference to a URL, and that URL is out on the web somewhere. So it's living inside of the host machine of the extension. So the Tableau dashboard says, hey, extension host, I have this URL. I would like to load this extension. The extension host passes over the extension front end, the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS that represents the extension. Everything I've described right now is just the same behavior as if you took your browser and pointed it at any web page, google.com, apple.com, tableau.com, whatever. The host machine will pass you over the HTML, JavaScript, and CSS that represents the web page, and your browser will render that appropriately. The difference here is that instead of rendering in your browser, it renders inside of a Tableau dashboard. Now, the critical piece that makes this from just being a web page to a Tableau extension is the extension's API. So the JavaScript inside of the extension can communicate with the dashboard in a variety of ways. It can interact, so it can tell the dashboard that it wants to filter. It can respond to interaction. That is, it can ask for information when the user clicks on marks, and then it can change what's being displayed in the extension appropriately. And it can get data, and this is useful for crunching information. Now, the fact that the extension itself can grab data is not the security concern in and of itself, because the extension front end is being executed client side. The data has not yet left the user's machine. The security concerns that have been expressed happen on this last piece. And that's because the extension, being a web application, can talk to the web. It can send information back to the extension host or to the web in general. Now, this is actually quite powerful for a variety of reasons. This enables extensions to integrate with Salesforce, ERP systems, and take action outside of Tableau. But it's also where the security concerns come into play. So the extension can grab data from the dashboard, and because it can communicate outside of the client, that data can leave the front end and go off to the web. Now, we understood this to be the concern, and the surveys that we sent out confirm that this is the #1 concern about extensions. Now, hopefully you have at least a little bit of faith in us that we knew this to be the case going into V1. We knew that data could leave the extension, and that was, again, part of the power of extensions and part of the risk. And so we built a variety of robust security measures to help prevent that. So how does security work in V1 before we get into the proposal? The first thing is the manifest file that the developer builds has to declare whether the extension uses full data or just summary data. The next step is that the author, when they drag an extension to their dashboard, or when a user opens a dashboard in Tableau Desktop that has a dashboard, they get a prompt that says, hey, this is the URL of this dashboard. Do you recognize this URL? And just so you know, it can access your aggregated data, or it would say your full data if that were the case. And are you okay with that? And finally, the server admins and site admins have the safe list, block list features to turn specific extensions on or off. Mark talked a little bit about this earlier. So there's three personas that are working together to ensure that the right extensions are being loaded by the right people. However, what happens if you don't really trust your dashboard authors? And I'm not talking about malicious dashboard authors. I'm talking about unwitting dashboard authors. People who just say, hey, this is a cool extension. I'm not going to, I don't know to do my due diligence around security there. And how many times do we see warnings in our browser throughout the day and just hit okay, assuming everything will be all right. And so the security concerns might come into play when you don't have faith that the dashboard authors will do the correct thing around vetting the extensions. So what is our V1 answer to that concern? There's two things. One, even if the dashboard author puts the wrong extension inside of their dashboard, this server and site admins can still prevent those unsecure extensions from running in server. And for desktop itself, as Mark said, you can use the registry key feature that we have for IT to centrally turn extensions off in the desktop. Just one thing to note about, Mark showed kind of an undocumented version we did in 2018.2.0 and 2018.2.1. As of 2018.2.2, there's a documented registry key specifically called, I forget what it's called, but it's a specific on-off switch for extensions. So that's in our documentation. All right. And what happens if you actually, you want to turn extensions off for everybody, but you do like extensions, so you want to make sure that they're still using them? You can allow extensions via web authoring only, which would follow the server site safe list and block list. A couple of companies have said, we're going to turn extensions off for almost everybody, and then for those few dashboard authors that we trust, we will, we being IT or the server administration group, will help them turn extensions back on so that they can use extensions in their dashboards. Okay, so that is all the current state of affairs. And the whole conversation around TC18 and since has been in which situations are those current solutions insufficient? We had a lot of conversations one-on-one with some server admins who wanted to call us up, and we got about 40 responses to our survey. I read every single one of them. They're open. They're not just multiple choice. There's a lot of text for me to read, and we're able to parse out really in which situations, which server environments, data environments, corporate environments are these solutions not sufficient. So the first thing is, not every enterprise has a method to enforce registry settings. That could be for a variety of reasons. So if you wanted to turn extensions off for all desktop users, the IT setup or the way that people download Tableau Desktop simply doesn't allow it. There could be a variety of reasons for this. The next thing is, a lot of people don't want to turn extensions off. They just want extensions to be more secure or have more control over them while still allowing them. And lastly, we'll see if there's another bullet point. Lastly, vetting extensions is not always feasible. So there's a couple of reasons here. One, are you going to open the code and really look at every possible extension that you are considering? Two, because it's a web application, you could vet the code today and it can change tomorrow. That's a feature because that allows companies to do bug fixes and enhance their features for their extensions. But it also means that you can't really vet the code because that isn't guaranteed to be the code that is loaded tomorrow. So based on those concerns, we have developed a proposal to enhance extension security. Actually, I'm going to pause here. I have my Q&A open. If anything about what I described previously is unclear, understanding the current world of extensions is a critical piece of this conversation. So please let me know in the Q&A if there's anything. All right, and as Mark said, do it in the Q&A button. I have the Q&A box open. There's no open questions, so I'll continue. All right, so we have 3 goals around enhancing the security around extensions moving forward. The first is to make extensions inherently more secure. Just the fact that they basically put the correct walls around an extension so that it can't do the things that people don't want it to do. We have a plan, and I'll give you the technical details in a second, but this is a medium-sized project that we will have to add to Tableau extensions, and so our target is sometime in 2019. My hope is 2019.2 or .3, but again, we're early in the development, so it's really hard to promise details. There's a quick question, just will the slides be made available? Yes, I'll make these slides available. Okay, so so as I said, this is something that'll be in the medium term, sometime hopefully in the next 3 to 6 months. Again, no promises. But what do we do? We wanted as a team to evaluate, is there anything we can do today to make people have the kind of controls around the current nature of Tableau extensions? And so we identified a couple of things that we can do in the short term to alleviate those concerns before we finish this medium-sized feature around making extensions inherently more secure. And later in 2019, we'll start working on some bigger picture items that further empower admins. We have a variety of good ideas. Many of them came from the responses to the survey, and a lot of them are bigger projects that we absolutely think will make the world of extensions a better world. And so we'll start working on those after we complete this project of making extensions inherently more secure. So what are we going to do? This is the critical piece. There's a question, so I'm going to read it. One question was, extensions are running, what is being captured in logs? Very good question. Everything that an extension does is something that a dashboard interactor could do. So you could see it. If you look at your logs, you would see that the user filtered, and then you would see that the user selected marks, and then you would see that the user refreshed the data, etc. All of those things are things that the extensions API can do. But when the extensions API makes those calls, the log file will indicate that which extension made that call. So that way you can audit the log files for which extensions are running and what did they do and when. Good question, thank you. Okay, so what are we going to do to make extensions inherently more secure? There is a web standard called the Content Security Policy, which we will use. And we will use the Content Security Policy to create a new class of extensions. These are, we internally are calling these sandboxed extensions. We're not in love with this term as far as a public-facing term, but we haven't thought of a good public-facing term yet. So I will use CSP sandboxed extensions moving forward. So we're going to create these sandbox extensions, and they simply will not have the technical ability to make external network requests. So here's that slide that I showed before. We had the critical piece that we highlighted in yellow that had extensions front end being able to send data out to the web. And the CSP sandbox extensions will completely disable this piece. because that is the piece that enables, that could lead to data exfiltration through extensions. This will make extensions inherently more secure. Excuse me. All right, so let's talk about the benefits of CSP secured extensions, content security policy secured extensions. The benefits are the extension can do what it needs to with the dashboard, but cannot send the data elsewhere. So it can query the data, and it can listen to the user's information, the user's clicks, and grab information about the marks, and based on that, can display the correct data inside of the extension. But no matter how much data it gets client side, that data cannot leave the client. It also means that there really is no longer a need for the dashboard author or the server admin to vet the extension's code or company. Now, I provide a caveat here, specifically to determine data exfiltration risk. You can think of a class of extensions that do something that aren't ideal. So for something, maybe an extension that clicks every filter in a quick filter on a loop. And that would create some a strain on your Tableau server. You wouldn't want that extension. So there's still other things that you would want to check in on. But the main concern, and those other concerns didn't show up in our survey responses at all. The only concern that showed up was data exfiltration. And so because of that, you will no longer need to look at the code or the company to determine if this company is trustworthy with your data, because that company will never see your data. It cannot leave the client side, at least for CSP secured extensions. And because of this, you can trust your dashboard author to not be able to make stupid mistakes on allowing malicious extensions. So what does the world of extensions look like after we enable this? So there's a lot of implications around after we build this. We'll have two classes of extensions. We'll have the CSP secured extensions, and we will also have the current open world extensions that are allowed to make network requests. Well, why if we enable these CSP secured extensions, are we allowing these other ones to be unsecure? And the reason is because as I said, those are really powerful extensions. They allow you to take action inside of Salesforce, or start a marketing campaign, or write back to the database. And so because those are really powerful types of extensions, we want to allow those. But now we'll be able to create this dichotomy between inherently secure extensions and extensions that need to have extra scrutiny around. CSP secured, and this is part of the proposal that we want feedback on. CSP secured extensions will be on by default in server and desktop. Network calls enabled extensions, again, a poor marketing term, and I apologize for that. We'll come up with a better term. One that's been proposed is a web enabled extension. Web enabled extensions will be off by default and will require some kind of administrative permission to allow. Exactly what that mechanism is, we still need to figure out. So maybe these are not allowed in Tableau Desktop at all, and you have to use Tableau web authoring, which will follow the server safe list block list. That's one idea that's been proposed. The other idea that's been proposed is a registry key that you have to turn it on, or maybe a license key, something like that. So we don't know exactly how we will enable these, but they will be off by default. These web-enabled extensions that could be a data exfiltration risk. So that is the proposal around CSP secured extensions. This is the critical piece of our proposal moving forward. I'm going to pause and make sure there are any questions around this. If you are unsure how this works, feel free to send questions in the Q&A or send me emails, and I'll give you my email address at the end of this conversation.
Yeah, please submit your questions by clicking the Q&A button. Myself, I'm Mark. I love this proposal.
Great. Thanks, Mark. All right. So now the critical piece here is that this is a medium-sized project for our team. one that we are absolutely motivated to build as soon as possible, but one that we have to build correctly. And so because of that, it's not something we'll get out in the next maintenance release, and definitely not even in 19.1. Again, hopefully 19.2.3, but we don't know until we start building it when it'll come. And again, it'll require a lot of Q&A to make sure it's working appropriately. So what do we do in the short term to allow people to upgrade to 2018.2 and .3 and 19.1 to alleviate some of these short-term concerns? One thing, this is probably the most commonly requested item that we know we can do in the short term, is to create an extensions on-off switch via the desktop installer command line flag. So a lot of people, a lot of companies, enterprises, go and download the out-of-the-box Tableau desktop installer, package it in a script, and then distribute that to their end users so that they can control specific things like turning off auto upgrade is something you can already do via the desktop installer command line. And we want to add extensions on-off to that. Also, and this originally comes from Mark, but it's also a very commonly requested item, is to change the server defaults to turn off the enable unknown extensions to run. That was the, if you remember Mark's slide, his first slide, he shows, hey, this is the most optimistic version, is to enable unknown extensions to run. The most pessimistic is to turn them all off. But as Mark recommends and says that what he's going to do is to go from the default to uncheck enable unknown extensions to run. Based on the feedback we got from the community, we are proposing that we will turn that off by default. What that means is only explicitly safe-listed extensions will run. So technically, extensions will be on by default in server, but when you install Tableau server, no extensions will be allowed to run until you go and you add them one by one or recheck this enable unknown extensions to run checkbox.
This would be great. Thanks, Michael. Just so I can chime in very quick here. Now, when we do that, if you can add another feature here to allow one extension to be enabled for all the sites.
Yep.
It will make admin's job easier.
Yep. So that exact suggestion that I got from you and from other people in this survey is something that we have in that bucket of stuff we want to do at some point, but is something we don't think we'll be able to do in the next couple of maintenance releases. This is kind of just inside baseball a little bit, but the way server settings and site settings work together is kind of more complicated than it should be, and so it's kind of a bigger project. So it's something we absolutely want to do, but it's not something we'll be able to do immediately like these two items. Great. So those are the short-term concerns. Now, I just want to highlight that both of these are ideas we got from the community and that we believe we can do quickly, as I've said. Before I move on, oh, my animations are messed up, that's all right. Before I move on, there was a question. Let's say if some groups in my company want to use the NLP providers like Narrative Science or others, how to get on top of the security and where the data gets hosted for NLP. So for those that don't know, Narrative Science, Automated Insights, and some other companies have extensions that do natural language generation for your Tableau dashboards. Awesome technology. It takes your data, uses artificial intelligence to create these natural language stories. In order for that to work, the data must leave the client. It must go out to the Narrative Science engine for the numbers to be crunched. So in the future, how will you, well, so for now, how do you handle that? Well, if you're concerned, Narrative Science and Automated Insights and most of the big companies that are doing this kind of thing will install their technology on premises for you so that you know your data is leaving the client but not leaving your corporate network. And that is a good solution for the future. once we get to the CSP enforced extensions world, those extensions will be off by default. And so when you want to add narrative science, you can determine whether it's okay that it goes to narrative science because you know, hey, that's a trustworthy company, or you can determine, no, we're never going to do that unless narrative sciences technology is on premises. Hope that answers that. It's kind of a brief answer with a kind of a only answers the tip of the iceberg, but whoever asked that is anonymous. Feel free to email me. I can put you in touch with narrative science, and we can all have a conversation about it. So the last piece, as I said, is bigger items, medium-sized projects that we absolutely are motivated to do. Most of these are suggestions from the community that we want to do, but we want to do after we put all of our resources focused on the CSP-enabled extensions and those shorter-term projects. Now, these are not fully researched yet, right? So these are just ideas that we are pretty sure we can do. We don't know exactly how we will do them, and we need to do a lot of user research, design work to make sure the user experience is good, etc. So none of this is exactly promised, but it's stuff that we will absolutely consider, and I can say pretty confidently that at least some of this will be built, will start to be built in 2019. The first is, this is one of the big conclusions from the server admin group, is control test stop extensions capabilities via the license key. Based on how our license key technology works, this is a rather big project, and we get why people want to do it, and we absolutely want to explore that. But there's a lot of work there on that side of the fence, the licensing team. So we have had conversations with them. They agree that this should be something we can do in the future, but it's not something we can do right away. Connected desktop, queries, server safe list, and block list. I love this idea. Another one that came from the community. I'm in Tableau desktop, and I load a dashboard that has an extension. Before it determines whether I'm allowed to load that, it says you must sign into server. I sign into server, and then that queries the server safe list, block list. This would allow for a centralized management of extension security, whether you are in desktop or in server. And is absolutely something that we believe we will build at some point. Again, a medium-sized project that we are going to start prototyping on as soon as we get the CSP security extensions done. Now, even in this world of CSP security extensions, this extensions still come from outside of your network. And that really shouldn't be a security concern anymore because the code is being executed internally and it can't send data back out to its host. But there's a lot of management things around that. First, you can't control the versioning of the extension. What happens if the host goes down? If it's some small company that built an extension that's really compelling and you want to enable it, but you don't have the faith that this company has the capabilities to keep it up and running. So the ability to bring the code from that host, from the extension, and host it inside of your network. What does that look like? We don't know. Maybe it's Tableau servers serving up these extensions. There's some security concerns that we really have to engineer around for that. But it adds a lot of really compelling administrative power to have Tableau server hosting these extensions as opposed to the third party. And lastly, as I said, a lot of really powerful extensions need server-side logic. The narrative science one that we just talked about is a really good example. It has to take your data, send it to something outside of Tableau for the numbers to be crunched. Is there a way that we could say that that data can go from the client to that specific server, whether that's living internally inside of Tableau server or where else, but we know that that data cannot leave those two places? that's something we want to consider, and that the technology there gets a lot trickier. We think there are some promising things being done in the web development community that we could borrow, but it's something that will require a big research project. As Mark said, a server-wide safe list, something we probably should have considered originally, I'll admit, but it's not in there now. And it's something that is not as big of a project as some of these other things, but it is a medium-sized project that we will consider once we get the critical piece of the CSP security extensions. Another one that came from the community is the configurable URL of extension gallery. A lot of companies want an internal extension gallery. Hey, these are the extensions that we host internally or that we've approved. And so when you click the link to the extension gallery, it will go not to extensiongallery.tableau.com, but to this configured URL. Now, this is probably not a huge project. It's something that we agree should be possible and something we want to do. Whether we delay, for example, the CSP security extensions development for a week or two to get this done, that's something we're still debating internally. It's been a few critical accounts that have asked for this, so if this is something you really want, please reach out to me and let me know. And also we need to talk about exactly what is acceptable for that user experience around configuration, or that admin experience around configuration. So please reach out to me if this is something you need. We have to figure out exactly how we prioritize this, but it's something we want to do. We will do. We just don't know exactly where it lands on that list of priorities. Once again, we've brainstormed as a team. Almost every idea that we came up with as a team, we either got from the community or we came up with on our own, and the community also came up with. So I just want to say thank you. I've been blown away by the great responses to the survey, the motivation from the server admin group to give us really good ideas. So thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, this is a summary of what the proposal is. The three buckets, the one in the middle, the CSP sandbox or CSP secured, that's content security policy. You can Google that. As I said, it's a web standard. That is something we're actively working on. And then a couple of short-term concerns, and then a lot of big, medium-sized projects or other small things that we are not sure whether we should do immediately or not on the right-hand side for that further empower admins. Now, I've said this a few times, but this is a proposal. This is not a lecture about what we're going to do and take it or leave it. That's not the idea. We really want to make sure that this proposal fits your needs. Now, are we going to, over the next month, solve everything that people are concerned about? Of course not. We are trying to hit as many people's environments as possible in the shortest amount of time as possible. So whether you disagree with our priorities, or you think even when we get to CSP sandbox extensions, it doesn't fit something, it doesn't solve some concern that you might have, or you just want to say that you do agree with the priorities, any of this, any opinion you have, we will absolutely take into account. Please email me at mkovner@tableau.com with those thoughts. I also am planning on sending another survey out. The last survey, for those that saw it, was more about what is your environment and what are your concerns. This next survey will be, here's what we propose, and will this work for you? Will you do X? Will you do Y once we have this new world? So I will send that out to everyone who is in this server admin group, plus everyone who got the survey previously. So everyone who is listening should definitely get this. Although I'm not sure if this is being recorded. If so, and you didn't attend, please send me an email that you'd like to attend. All right, so that's all I have. Again, I'm going to open up for Q&A. Please send all your questions you have into the Q&A slide. First question, can the ability to reach the extension gallery at tableau.com be controlled administratively? Not through any feature that Tableau has. This is really just a browser that you could go to, and we do link from Tableau Desktop to that browser. But even if we gave you a control to change that link, which we already discussed, the user could still open their browser and go to extensiongallery.tableau.com unless you have some IT rules that prevent them from going to some firewall rules that prevent them from going there. The next question is, are there any examples of extensions embedded into a Tableau dashboard? Yeah, I could give a demo or two here in a couple minutes. The best thing to do is to search for Tableau dashboard extensions, and you'll see everything there is there. There was also a lot of good content at TC that you could go watch on YouTube. But if the Q&A loses steam around the topic we talked about today, then I'll show a quick demo here in a few minutes. So Mark, go ahead and leave that question up in the open questions, and I'll
Okay.
do it in a little bit. Another question, can the same Tableau license key of Tableau Desktop install in two different users' computer? So that's really a question for your account manager. In general, no. Tableau Desktop license key is allowed to be installed by the same one person on two different machines, two different of their machines. Maybe that's what you're asking. So that is allowed if it's the same person, but if it's two different people, then that is not the intention for the license. Every user of Tableau should have the same license key. I was just wondering if I can enable guest access with AD authentication. I think so. Probably the people on the call would be better, would know better than I whether you can do that or not.
This is Mark. I don't think so.
Nope.
At least I'm not aware of. When you turn on a guest account, you turn on a guest account. It's nothing to do with AD anymore when it's on.
But if you authenticate via AD and you're on core-based licensing, you couldn't also enable guest user? No, you have to be on local.
Yeah, but for that site, when you have a guest account on, it doesn't matter anymore users. So AD doesn't matter anymore. Any user can access.
Right.
The AD doesn't make sense anymore for that particular site. Other sites, yes. You can turn on one site with a guest account, very public open site for your company. Remaining site, you can still have AD. That's a normal common use cases.
Okay. Another question was to remind everyone what my title and function with Tableau is. A good question. My name is Michael Kovner. I'm a product manager for our developer platform team focused on extensions and the embedding API. And so I work day to day with the software engineers that build our APIs and help determine what are we going to build next, help message with our community, etc. So just typical technical product management work, but specifically focused on extensions and embedding. All right, so there might be more questions. Please feel free to throw them into the Q&A while I do a quick demo. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing so I can share. Let's see. Open Tableau Desktop, and then I'll share again in a second. Again, if you have any more questions, I'll get to them in a second. I'm going to do a very quick Tableau extensions demo. I gotta go reshare. And Mark, can you confirm? Can you confirm you can see Tableau Desktop?
Yeah. Your desktop. Yeah.
So here is a fun demo that I like to show as the power of Tableau extensions. Here is a dashboard with a map of the Seattle area, and there are wild animal sightings in that map. So here's the neighborhood where I live. Looks like there have been some ostrich sightings and some cheetah sightings. Here's Tableau's headquarters neighborhood. Some monkey sightings, cheetah, ostrich. So this is kind of weird. So in case you're skeptical of the data of these wild animal sightings in Seattle, you should know that the data is from 2050. So it is a post-apocalyptic data set. So we had this data set and we wanted to have a fun way to filter it to match the fun nature of the dashboard. Now, you can, of course, create a quick filter, but again, my colleague wanted a fun way to filter the dashboard. So we created this extension. As Mark showed, here's the little extension object that you see in the bottom left-hand corner. I'll drag it to the screen. You get this prompt where you can either choose My Extensions or go to the extension gallery. I'll click My Extensions. And I'll navigate to a manifest file. As I said, these manifest files are just the metadata that points at the URL of the extension. And that's why you see that my manifest files that I have in my folder are 7 kilobytes, 5 kilobytes, 1 kilobyte. Super small. So I'm going to grab this one called Jungle Book and add that to my extension. Here's the security prompt that I was talking about earlier. It says, do you trust this URL? It can access your summary data, and I'll go ahead and say, yep, I trust it, I'll allow it. And what this particular extension, now everything you see is custom code. So what this particular extension allows me to do is it allows me to choose an image to act as the filter for my dashboard. Now using the extensions API, it queries what sheets are on my dashboard. There's only one, so I'll choose that one. And what filters are on that sheet? There's only one, so I'll choose that one. I'll click up. So now it loads that image that I pointed at, and what this extension allows me to do is draw polygons around parts of the image to act as my filter. So I'm going to do very crude polygons here using my touchpad. Again, it queries the dashboard and says, what for that filter that you choose called animal, what are the values? And here's the list of values that are in that dashboard. So what I drew around, of course, is the cheetah. So I'll go ahead and do that. And now I'm just going to do one more around the lion. And that's a lion. Hit save. So now I'm out of configuration mode. You can say the dashboard author is done. Now I'm a dashboard interactor. I'll get out of dashboard, out of the extension configuration. And now this image acts as a filter. I can click on the cheetah, and you see I've filtered to cheetah sightings. I click on the lion, and I filter to lion sightings. So a fun, simple example of how doing something very simple, the ability to filter dashboards, can create a totally new experience around dashboards in Tableau. You take this same idea and you apply it to people doing really cool stuff in the gallery around creating images, that individual images you can click on to filter. You can also, as I said, use that to take action in other external systems, etc. Okay, I answered that one. Thank you, Steve Janiak, for answering the question around guest access. I'm not sure if the other user can see that.
I'm sending a separate reply to Steve. I'd like to get offline conversation with Steve. What Steve said is how I see on my server.
Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah, maybe there are different settings I'd love to learn from Steve. Steve, I'm sending you my email address. Let's get offline.
And I think the person who asked the question originally is Lakshmi Maria. I'm not sure how badly I butchered that name. So be sure to include that. All right. I think that's all the time we have today. Again, I'm open for email conversations, for having more detailed conversations, etc., with all of you. Please let me know what you think of this proposal, and also expect a survey to come out shortly.
Thank you very much, Michael. This is awesome. I love the proposals. I cannot ask anything more, to be honest with you, based on what I've tested so far for extensions. Thank you very much for audience for your time. And I think this will be the last virtual meeting for server admin groups this year. Definitely will talk to you next year. And also, of course, thank you very much, Michael and Rusty, for your behind the scene to make this happen. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.